over the last number of years, we've seen more, especially families with children, living in their cars, living in parks. The number of people every year that die young because of homelessness goes up. And so continually there are single adults and couples and moms and dads and families and kids who just cannot find a place that they can afford.
From WLWT, this is Let's Talk Cincy, presented by Western and Southern Financial Group. Put our financial strength behind you.
Hello everyone, I'm Curtis Fuller and welcome to Let's Talk Cincy. The 2023 edition of the State of Homelessness Report shows homelessness has been on the rise since 2017 nationwide, with an overall increase of 6%. The report also shows in Cincinnati and throughout Ohio, more than 10,000 people experience homelessness.
Life doesn't have to be this way. You know, it does not have to be this way. The housing crisis and homelessness, with the current resources, we could use them all perfectly and it wouldn't fix the issue because there's not enough.
Escaping this heat is especially difficult for those who call the streets their home. This emergency run on Liberty, just an example of the toll the high temperatures can take on anyone. St. Francis Seraph Church in Over the Rhine is just one place that keeps its doors open for rest and relief.
I'd say it's a matter between life or death.
70-year-old Richard Turner says here he receives kindness and help, not judgment.
And that's what that I'm grateful for. That people are still people with good hearts and willing to help.
About 10 years ago, we saw a great need for just simple things, a place to go to the restroom with some dignity. And as a result of that, we decided we were going to open our doors. They'd be open all day long for really that purpose. So we were able to secure some funding so we could have security guards here. And it's grown into people who've been out on the street all night long. They're not going to get any rest because they don't know what's going to happen to them if they fall asleep. So they can come in here and they can sleep. And this year, for the first time in 164 years, the place is air conditioned. This is the first summer we've had air conditioning, so it makes it even better.
We're told the number of people homeless who die each year has been increasing. Last year, the number here in Greater Cincinnati was 172 people.
So I think it's important to say that certainly the largest group of people experiencing homelessness are folks that are bouncing every few nights from, a friend's house or a stranger's house, usually with their kids in tow. That's the largest group and generally go uncounted. At least 20% of our school district will experience homelessness in a school year, at least 20%. The second largest would be in the shelter system, and then the third are folks that are outdoors. And there are people outdoors throughout the entirety of our city and county, everywhere. If you yourself are not living outdoors, you may not see everybody, right? But the people are there. We often do think about the cold, but certainly the heat wears on people too. We know that nationally homelessness takes about 25 years off the lifespan of a person. And that doesn't, when somebody dies because of homelessness, it doesn't necessarily mean, this person died in shelter or they died, under a bridge somewhere. It could mean that. It could also mean that this person might have been housed for a couple of years, but died at age 45 because of the years they spent exposed to the heat, exposed to the winter, with less access to good health care, increased stress. And so certainly the heat, if you can't get out of the heat, or you can't get out of it enough, it's gonna wear on your body, and it's gonna take time away from your span on Earth here.
Up next, we'll hear more from the director of the Cincinnati Coalition for the Homeless about the state of things right here in the Queen City when Let's Talk Cincy continues. Welcome back, everyone. As I mentioned earlier, the National Alliance to End Homelessness released its 2023 report called The State of Homelessness in America. Now, according to this report, Ohio ranks 11th in the nation in total numbers when you consider the homeless population. There are many factors that result in people being unhoused. The challenges are great in communities all across this nation. Here in Cincinnati, there are many resources and organizations working to address this issue. I sat down with the head of the Cincinnati Coalition for the Homeless, Josh Spring, to talk about the challenges and his perspective about possible solutions.
You know, in Cincinnati, we're at a point where and we've been here for a while, any number that you hear is gonna be inaccurate. And it's important to realize if even numbers that are accurate of, well, here's the number of people that stayed in our shelter system in the past year. On an average day in our family shelters, nearly 90% of families with children who call seeking shelter are turned away because there's no room. So many households are losing their homes, there's no room. And so that means that the numbers just begin to reflect the numbers of beds that were available, right? If there were more beds available tonight than last night, the numbers would be higher tonight. And over the last number of years, we've seen more, especially families with children, living in their cars, living in parks. Meanwhile, we've seen, despite all of our talk about the need for affordable housing, the desperate need for affordable housing, we saw a report just again this month that year over year, we had the largest increase in rents in the entire country. Same thing this time last year. Our city had the largest increase in rents in the entire country. And so continually there are single adults and couples and moms and dads and families and kids who just cannot find a place that they can afford. And then you got a whole bunch of other folks who may be housed, but they really can't afford it. You know, they're paying more than half of their income just for housing. And so one little hiccup, you know, sends you on the street. And that's why we have got to invest boldly in affordable housing if we care about life, the life of individuals, and if we care about the life of our city. You know, a city's not going to last too long if half of the city can't afford to stay. And that's where we're at. We're at about 40% of households in our city fall within the income brackets where the most desperate need for housing is. About 40% of households fall in that need. And to make matters worse, probably a better perspective is considering renters, 60% of the city rents, and homeowners, that's 40% of the city. 1 out of every 3 households can't afford the home they're living in, whether they rent or own. They cannot afford where they're living. 1/3 of the city right now today. there's lots of work that gets done, right? So our system of shelters and affordable housing developers and soup kitchens, etc., neighborhood groups, all work very hard and work together and do great work and have successes. But the problem is that with the resources currently available to tackle the problem of housing, of the housing crisis and homelessness, with the current resources, we could use them all perfectly and it wouldn't fix the issue because there's not enough. And housing, affordable housing, is one of those things where we have talk about it, but we keep trying to do it without any real money, you know, or we have city council politicians talk about it and they say we're putting money into it, but they try to redefine what affordable is. You know, right now the city will tell you that paying $1,000 for a studio apartment is affordable to somebody with a low income. The city will tell you that, but that doesn't ring true in reality. Nobody believes that.
Up next, citizens taking their message to City Hall, their effort to get the issue of affordable housing on the ballot when Let's Talk Cincy continues. Cracking down on slum landlords and out-of-state investment companies who buy up real estate in our city. Senator Sherrod Brown and city leaders say this is a growing problem nationwide and right here in Cincinnati. Recently, they announced a partnership to draw attention to a measure called the Stop Predatory Investing Act to help make the cost of home ownership more affordable. News 5's Ashley Kirkland has the story.
Once under the control of a slum investment landlord, this two-story, four-bedroom, one-bath family home in East Price Hill was bought by the city and is now being fixed up to be rented out. It's also the backdrop of a bigger problem in our city and beyond.
What we're seeing with private investors, with predatory investors coming into cities and essentially sucking dollars out of cities. Cincinnati is not leading the way.
In 2021, 16% of homes in Cleveland, Ohio were purchased by investors with one zip code, reaching 70%. In Cincinnati, they bought 15% of homes and almost 50% of homes in certain low-income communities. One company bought 29 homes on a single street. Large investors use technology and all-cash offers to outcompete buyers, many who are first-time buyers.
But these out-of-town investors, these big corporate investors come in, they buy up our moderately priced homes and they decrease our inventory, so we don't have affordable homes to pass on to our low and moderate income families.
Not only do these big investors hike up rent prices, they neglect the upkeep.
And we looked at the highest 5 companies that had major code violations, and those companies, we found out, had purchased over 4,000 homes in Hamilton County since 2013.
If passed, the bill would restrict big corporate investors from getting big tax breaks, prohibit those who acquire 50 or more single-family rental homes from deducting interest or depreciation on those properties, and incentivize big investors to sell single-family rental homes back to homeowners or nonprofits in the community.
And according to the census, home ownership nationwide is above 60%. In Cincinnati, that number is way below at just around 35%. Senator Brown trying to get bipartisan support in hopes of moving this bill forward. Meanwhile, recently, several citizens packed City Hall to let their voices be heard about the issue of affordable housing. Citizens have collected nearly 12,000 signatures to put an issue on the ballot. They want an earnings tax restored to the 2020 level, I'm told, and the money would then be used to address the issue. Here's just some of what we heard down at City Hall.
And the thing is, once it passes, it will amend our charter to restore our earnings tax to its 2020 level and use the restoration to fund truly affordable housing. However, because of the way state law works, when we turn in the signatures,
it will require 2 votes. We will have to go back next November to vote to implement that restored tax. However, if you, 6 of 9 of you, vote to put it on, you can do it all at once.
City Council of Cincinnati has been talking for affordable housing for years. It is long time overdue. It's past time to talk. It's time to act. And you can do that today. In addition to the ballot and properly funding the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, the city, in my view, also needs a strategy to ensure that big developers don't continue to receive big incentives while providing little or no truly affordable housing or payment in lieu. I'm okay with either one, but they need to do something to benefit the community.
I come to give a face to those of us who are and who have experienced homelessness. They look like me. No, I don't look like what I've been through, so I praise God, amen. But I've been through it. I was homeless for almost a year the first time. COVID wiped me out the second time. And the third time, I had to separate myself from my children because I couldn't walk them through that a third time. I was living under Marion Way in my Honda before the Esther Haddon House had taken me in. And even then, I am now still in a permanent supportive housing program, but due to other circumstances, now I gotta move again. So I just come to give y'all a face to what we look like. We work, we have children, we have lovely personalities, we are educated, but we can't afford our rent.
The group that has worked together over the past couple of years to put this initiative in place have gathered the signatures to place this on the ballot for the public, for the voters to decide, are we serious enough about this issue to tax ourselves to solve it? The problem is state law requires 2 votes to accomplish that, and that delays implementation a year. There are people in our city who are dying because of lack of affordable housing. They can't wait a year.
Yeah, so this 0.3% we're asking for, first and foremost, is a restoration. It's what we were paying in 2020, what we had been paying for 40 years prior to that. And so this is returning us to a familiar tax rate. It would cost most families in Cincinnati about $11 a month for the household, not just the individual. And so a minuscule amount, but will generate between $40 and $50 million a year in tax revenue that can be used to create and preserve affordable housing and also support pathways to home ownership. My sister, for instance, has moved 3 times in 3 years because her rent keeps going up. Her last place was $1,500 a month when she moved in. They jumped to $2,000 a month, right? And so it's just the impact of that. We know that homelessness is a growing challenge for the kids in our schools. And so you have students who are going to Cincinnati Public Schools each day who don't know where they're gonna sleep at night. I was that kid, I grew up as that kid, and so I know what that feels like to constantly be moving, to sleeping on your relatives' couches and pretending it's a sleepover when in actuality it's because you don't have a home of your own. That impacts everything and everyone.
Next up, some final thoughts on this important issue of homelessness in our city and nation when Let's Talk Cincy continues. And finally today, an interesting perspective about this issue from someone who has been working in the area for nearly a half-century. He's Brother Tim Sucher from St. Francis Seraph Church.
Well, it's very simple. It's very simple, the response. Jesus said, what you do to the least of my brothers and sisters, you do unto me. And he doesn't say they have to be worthy or they have to be this or they have to be this. Just the least. And I think we're seeing the least. We're seeing people who are undereducated, underemployed. We see people who are mentally ill. We see people who are addicted. We see, people who have just fallen on hard times. And so we do what the Lord tells us to do. So we don't have any real problems during the day when the church is open. In the evening sometimes, or out in front, you may run into this or that happening. But that's every place, you know what I mean? So, yeah, we don't have too many problems. But when you open your doors and you're dealing with all kind of different people, dealing with all kind of different things, you do have issues from time to time. It's a challenge. Just putting a roof over somebody's head is not going to solve the problem, because you have to deal with the whole person. So you have to deal with the housing issue, you have to deal with the financial issues, you have to deal with the spiritual issues, the physical issues, the addiction issues, if there are the mental health issues. So if you just put somebody into a house and say, oh, we're done, we're not. So there has to be a whole kind of, to deal with the whole holistically with individuals in order to really deal with the problem. I think one of the issues when dealing with people who are homeless is we refer to them as homeless, the poor, as if they're just this group of this. I never refer to anybody. I always say people who are homeless, people who are poor. When we start seeing individuals in these situations as people, as opposed to just putting them into a whole category. Instead of a category, they become people. And I think so often we do that, and then there's fear because we don't know, we don't see them as people and the like, but they're human beings, all of them, no matter what the issue is.
And that is a perfect place to end the program. That does it for the show today. Thanks for watching. I'm Curtis Fuller. I'll see you next time for another edition of Let's Talk Cincy.